Hi Guy, welcome to TV Spoilers. Rumors about Chelsea Lawson and Adam Newman have always been enough to spark a storm in Genoa City. But this time what turns their romance into the next true flashpoint isn't just history. And it isn't only the raw chemistry that keeps pulling them back into each other's orbit. It's the weight of a possibility that can't be talked away, negotiated, or postponed. Chelsea is unexpectedly pregnant. For Chelsea, the idea doesn't arrive wrapped in soft light or sentimental destiny. It lands like a cold shock, a fact with a pulse, forcing her to confront the one fear she has never fully defeated: fear that Adam will once again drag her into a life ruled by chaos, half-promises, and consequences that Connor will have to feel long after the adults have moved on. At first, the change creeps in quietly, almost cruelly subtle. Chelsea tells herself she's tired, that stress is catching up, that life in Genoa City has never offered anyone the luxury of calm. Yet the signs keep returning in ways she can't dismiss: strange nausea that comes and goes like a warning, a heaviness in her body that doesn't match her routine, moments when her heart seems to race for no reason at all. She's lived through enough upheaval to know her instincts are rarely wrong, but she's also lived through enough pain to question her own reality. She tries to keep her face steady for Connor, tries to maintain the rhythm of motherhood and normalcy, tries to treat every symptom like background noise. But the more she forces herself into fine, the clearer it becomes that something inside her is demanding to be acknowledged. Choosing to see a doctor isn't about hope. It's about survival. Chelsea cannot live inside uncertainty. Uncertainty has always been the thing that breaks her fastest. She has spent too many years navigating gray zones, learning to exist in relationships that could tilt in a single day, learning to get back up after Adam's mistakes and her own weakness for him. But this isn't a psychological game. This isn't a power play orchestrated behind closed doors. This is biology. This is reality. And that's what terrifies her most, because reality doesn't bend for anyone. Not even for someone as determined and protective as Chelsea. When she gets confirmation, Chelsea doesn't feel joy. She goes numb. The world seems to drain of sound, leaving only the echo of her own breathing and the weight in her chest. For a few stunned seconds, she doesn't even think about Adam or Sally Spectra or what Genoa City will do with the story. She thinks about Connor. She thinks about what a real family has always meant to him: stability, safety. A home that doesn't turn into a battlefield when adults lose control. And the thought is both tender and merciless, because Chelsea knows how difficult it is to build stability on a foundation that still trembles. The next question hits like a blade: does she tell Adam now, when their relationship isn't even clearly defined, when he's still caught between her and Sally, when any choice he makes could become the spark that ignites everything? Chelsea leaves carrying a secret that feels heavier than anything she's ever held. She moves through her day as if she's balancing glass in her hands, and wrong step and it will shatter. And the shards will cut everyone she loves. Ordinary sounds turn sharp: a phone ringing, a door closing, Connor's voice asking normal questions. Everything feels like a test of her composure. In her mind she runs every possible scenario until the edges blur. Adam's face. When he hears the truth, Adam's instinct to control the narrative. Adam's history of turning tenderness into turmoil. She wonders if he will be frightened, relieved, angry, determined, or all of it at once. And the most brutal question of all: if Adam does step up, will it be love, or will it be guilt dressed up as responsibility? Chelsea's inner world snaps, caught between two opposing forces. On one side is the terror of being reduced to a convenient choice, in Adam's ongoing war with himself, of becoming the path he takes simply because it looks like the right thing to do. On the other side is a dangerous, aching hope that maybe this time he will truly change. That maybe Connor's dream of a stable home won't always be a fantasy. Chelsea has no patience left for pretty promises. But she also can't deny how much she wants to believe in the possibility of something better. And that wanting is what scares her, because wanting is what has lured her back into pain before. While Chelsea struggles in silence, Adam remains trapped in the kind of emotional limbo he knows too well. Stability has always felt like a beautiful room without air to him. Steps inside, then panics and runs back toward the chaos that makes him feel alive. He loves Connor. He has tried, in his own imperfect way, to become a better father. But he still carries shadows that haven't been healed, patterns that resurface the moment pressure rises. Chelsea is a steadying force that both comforts and threatens him, because he knows he can break her, and he knows she sees him too clearly. Sally, on the other hand, represents intensity, ambition. That edge of danger Adam sometimes mistakes for meaning. Adam doesn't always admit it, even to himself. But he is addicted to being pulled in opposite directions, because when he's stretched thin, he can convince himself he's still in control. Chelsea can't keep the truth buried forever. Each day of silence starts to feel like a lie. And Chelsea refuses to let a child's life begin in dishonesty. She refuses to let Connor live inside another cycle of half-truths and adult confusion. When she finally decides to tell Adam, it isn't because she suddenly becomes fearless. It's because she realizes she can't protect herself or her children by hiding reality. She tells him not to trap him, not to demand anything, but because he deserves to know and she deserves to see who he truly becomes. When responsibility stands in front of him with no escape routes, the moment Adam understands, the air between them changes instantly. He doesn't react like a man receiving a romantic miracle. He reacts like a man being forced into a crossroads where every direction costs him something. Shock gives way to confusion, then to a silence so heavy Chelsea can almost hear the question forming behind his eyes. How did their lives change so quickly? In that pause, Chelsea understands something painful. Waiter Adam chooses next. The version of their story they once knew is already gone. Adam has never been good at sitting still with reality. His instinct is to seize control, to rearrange the pieces before anyone else can. But this time there is no strategy that makes the pregnancy disappear. It demands a future. It demands a timeline. It demands that Adam look at himself and ask what kind of father he will be, not just to Connor, but now to another child. And that question digs deeper than his pride. Because Connor has already seen too much. Connor has already hoped and been disappointed. Adam knows he cannot keep being the storm that tears through his son's life. If anything can pull Adam toward the light, it is the way Connor looks at him when he wants to believe his father can do better. Chelsea watches Adam with ruthless caution. She doesn't let herself soften too quickly. She doesn't let her heart sprint ahead of proof. She sees the conflict in him: family versus ego, responsibility versus impulsion. She hates that she still cares enough to notice every detail. But as Adam's initial confusion settles, something else rises: determination. Not a romantic declaration, not a dramatic transformation overnight, but a stubborn, almost unfamiliar sense of purpose. He begins to treat the role of fatherhood with a seriousness that isn't just performative. He begins to crave the idea of stability for Connor, not as a slogan, but as a necessity. And with that craving, a hard truth becomes unavoidable: he cannot keep Sally in the emotional orbit the way he used to. Not if he wants Chelsea to trust him. Not if he wants to build something that doesn't collapse under the first gust of doubt. Adam starts to push Sally aside, not with sudden cruelty, but with a firmness that feels like a door slowly locking. For Adam, the decision is both strength and punishment. It forces him to let go of the part of his life that once made him feel powerful. But Chelsea can't ignore the shift. A part of her wants to believe it's real, that he is finally choosing a path because it's right rather than because it's exciting. Another part of her whispers that Adam is reacting to pressure, that once the immediate crisis cools, he may drift back into old patterns. Chelsea lives in that tension, pulled between hope and fear, between wanting to trust and needing to protect herself from heartbreak. Sally doesn't need anyone to explain what's happening. She feels it. She notices the distance, the new restraint, the way Adam's priorities begin to rearrange themselves. And the worst part for Sally is that this isn't just Chelsea winning. This is a future taking shape: Connor, responsibility, and now a baby that changes the entire board. Sally's pride flares, but her hurt runs deeper than pride. She isn't the kind of woman who quietly accepts being placed on the margins. Yet she also can't easily argue against the kind of reason this situation creates: family, stability, a child on the way. When Sally confronts Adam, the tension doesn't need dialogue to be explosive. It lives in posture and silence, in the way space between people becomes a weapon. Adam cannot pretend nothing is different, and Sally refuses to accept being treated like a backup plan. The conflict becomes sharper because it isn't only about love, it's about power, about identity, about what it means to be chosen or discarded. Sally looks at Adam and realizes she's seeing a version of him she never expected. A man considering the possibility of stability as if it might actually be worth the cost. Chelsea, at the center of it all, doesn't feel victorious. She feels exposed. She feels like she's standing under lights she never asked for, forced to live out a story that everyone will judge before they understand it. She wants to keep Connor protected, to keep the world from turning this pregnancy into gossip and ammunition. But she also knows that in Genoa City, secrets don't stay quiet. They grow teeth. They find the weakest point and bite. And just when the path begins to look set, Chelsea has told the truth. Adam is leaning toward family. Sally can feel herself being pushed away. Chelsea becomes haunted by a new, dangerous thought. Adam's shift is real, yes, but it's also fast. Too fast. Chelsea tries to convince herself not to spiral. But the question lingers like a shadow: what if Adam's determination isn't only about love or responsibility? What if he knows something Chelsea doesn't? What if this story is already moving beyond her control? That is when the most unsettling hook emerges, not from an outsider, but from the rhythm of the situation itself. Chelsea begins to sense that Sally isn't merely reacting to Adam's change. Sally may be closer to the truth than Chelsea ever intended. And Chelsea is left facing a terrifying possibility, the secret she thought was hers to reveal, maybe slipping out of her hands right as Connor begins to hope that this time, their family might finally become real. When Sally Spectra learns that Chelsea is pregnant, the news doesn't feel like gossip she can outrun. It feels like the sharp click of a door closing right in front of her. Sally doesn't need anyone to explain what a baby can mean in Adam Newman's world. A child can become an anchor, a reason to choose stability, a reason to look responsible, a reason to stop living on the edge. It can turn Chelsea into the sensible future in his mind and reduce Sally to a dangerous memory. He must cut away to prove he's changed. The sensation of being pushed to the margins hits Sally so fast she barely has time to lift her pride as a shield. For a brief, brutal moment, she feels herself shrink, like every promise she's made to herself, every attempt to stand tall without Adam, is crushed under one simple truth: she still loves him in the most perilous way. The kind of love that makes you willing to do anything, just to avoid watching him build a life with someone else. Sally isn't only afraid of losing Adam, she's afraid of losing her own story. She has always turned pain into fuel, rejection into ambition, failure into a sharper edge. But Chelsea's pregnancy doesn't feel like a fair fight. It isn't about chemistry or passion or who makes Adam feel more alive. It's about responsibility, family. The kind of right choice Adam can cling to when he wants to convince himself he's finally becoming a better man. And Sally can already see how easily he could justify leaving her behind, not because he hates her, but because walking away would look clean. It would look mature. It would look like progress. That thought feels like betrayal from fate itself. And then Sally hates herself for even thinking it, because she knows no one owes her a perfect ending. Adam isn't obligated to return, but understanding something and surviving it are two different things. In the days that follow, Sally lives wound tight, alert to every shift in the air around Adam. She studies him with a cruel kind of sensitivity, his pauses, his avoidance, the way his gaze doesn't stay on her as long as it used to. Each small detail pushes her toward the conclusion she fears most: Adam is slowly closing the door. Sally knows Adam better than most people admit. When he latches onto an idea of responsibility, he can become frighteningly cold, because he will believe he's doing what must be done. Sally doesn't only see Adam drifting away, she sees him rehearsing a better version of himself, and that is what terrifies her. Because how do you compete with someone else's right decision when you're holding nothing but heartbreak and memory? That desperation doesn't break Sally. It drives her toward a choice that feels instinctive, almost animal. She begins watching her own body in a way she's tried to avoid. Fatigue, mood shifts, physical changes she once blamed on stress suddenly carry a different meaning. The thought arrives at first like a tiny spark, then grows into a possibility that scares her and seduces her at the same time. If Chelsea can hold Adam through the gravity of the future, then Sally needs something that cannot be ignored. She hates herself for thinking it. She also can't stop. Hope, for Sally, becomes a lifeline, and lifelines make people reckless. Sally goes to a doctor in secret, guarding her privacy like it's the last piece of dignity she can still control. She refuses to let anyone else turn this into rumor before she knows what's true. When the confirmation comes that she is pregnant too, Sally's emotions don't move in a straight line. Relief crashes into confusion, then into a deep, old ache. Pregnancy isn't just an advantage. It drags her back to the place she has tried to fold away neatly. The complicated love she shared with Adam, the cycles of promise and damage, and the child they lost, a loss that didn't only steal a life that never had a chance to be named, but also stole the version of Sally who once believed she might have a normal kind of happiness. She leaves that appointment carrying a new secret, but it isn't only hope. It is weight. It is responsibility. And bitterly, it is also a weapon. Sally feels herself standing on a thin moral edge. She can use this truth to pull Adam back, but what does that mean? Is it love, or fear, or obligation dressed up as devotion? She tells herself she doesn't want to trap him, that she simply wants him to know, that she wants him to see there is still a future between them. But beneath that, Sally cannot deny the harsher truth: she wants to win. She wants to prove she is not the woman Adam discards the moment life demands stability. When Sally finally confronts Adam, she doesn't approach him like a woman begging. She approaches him like someone placing herself on the operating table. Either she says everything and accepts the cut, or she stays silent and watches him leave without turning back. She brings up their past, not as sweet nostalgia but as unresolved truth. Love between Sally and Adam has always carried a haunted intensity. They saw each other's darkness and called it understanding. They hurt each other, then clung to each other as if pain proved the connection was real. The grief of their lost child remains the forbidden room neither of them enters without bleeding. Sally knows if she touches that place, Adam will not be able to stay untouched. Not because he will immediately run back to her, but because he will be forced to feel in for Adam. Feeling always leads to chaos. Adam's reaction is the familiar confusion, only heavier now. He stands between two forces pulling in opposite directions. On one side, Chelsea, a new reality forming, a new responsibility approaching. A chance to prove to Connor that he can build something that doesn't fall apart. On the other side, Sally, a love that never truly died, a bond built in fire. And a shared grief they never had the courage to face and heal. Adam's inner conflict becomes a war. He feels himself dragged backward to old patterns: hesitation, guilt. The slow harm of not choosing fast enough. And he knows, even as he fights it, that his indecision is what wounds people most. Sally sees his conflict and it gives her hope and rage at once. Hope because she still matters enough to shake him. Rage because she suspects she is once again being used as a test for Adam's so-called growth. She doesn't want to be a lesson. She wants to be chosen. That knee-draw and proud pushes Sally into something quieter and more dangerous. If she cannot win Adam through pure feeling, she will make him doubt that Chelsea is as safe and stable as he wants to believe. Sally begins digging through Chelsea's past mistakes like someone opening an old box of broken glass. She doesn't need to invent anything. Genoa City never forgets. Sally tells herself she's only reminding Adam of what's real, protecting him from choosing the wrong path. But the more she leans into that logic, the more she senses she's sliding down a slick slope. Each time she exposes a crack in Chelsea's image, she also exposes something ugly in herself, part willing to push another woman down, just to climb higher. Chelsea, meanwhile, isn't blind. She feels the atmosphere shift around Adam and Sally, as if the air itself is changing pressure before a storm. Pregnancy makes her both more vulnerable and more determined. Her body is more sensitive, her emotions more easily stirred. But her protective instincts sharpen because a child depends on her steadiness. Chelsea doesn't want to be pulled into a war with Sally, yet she cannot pretend Sally is irrelevant. To Chelsea, Sally isn't just the ex, Sally represents the version of Adam that chose excitement over stability. And Chelsea understands, with a chill she can't shake, that she is stepping into a dangerous zone, the place where Adam wants to do right, but might still be tempted by the wrong thing he knows too well. The clash between Sally and Chelsea arrives like weather, inevitable, charged, building until the sky finally breaks. It doesn't have to be loud to be violent. It happens in eyes, posture, the careful way words become blades without needing to be quoted. Sally's smile turns thin as a knife. Chelsea keeps her spine straight like she's building a wall. The space between them fills with everything unsaid: Adam, the future, the right to claim what he will become. Sally implies Chelsea is unstable, that her past is full of cracks that will not hold under pressure. Chelsea responds with cold restraint, refusing to give Sally even a sliver of weakness to exploit. It is not only jealousy, it is survival. Afterward, Chelsea feels anger and fear twisting together until her hands shake. She hates that Sally can reach the deepest doubt she's trying to bury, the doubt that Adam can tolerate a stable life. The fear that she will be treated as the safe option rather than the loved one. The terror that Connor will once again become collateral damage in adult chaos. Chelsea tells herself she doesn't need to fight Sally. She tells herself she only needs to protect her health and her child. But in Genoa City, standing still often means being shoved. Sally leaves that confrontation more convinced she must play her final card sooner. She cannot allow Adam to decide based on half a story. She cannot allow Chelsea to monopolize the future. And so Sally reveals her pregnancy to Adam. And the shock lands like a stone dropped into deep water. Adam doesn't just feel surprised, it looks as if the ground has shifted beneath him. In that moment, he loses the comfort of a simple narrative. He can't tell himself that doing right means choosing Chelsea because Chelsea is pregnant. Now there are two pregnancies, two futures, two children, two women linked to him in ways that cannot be erased. And hovering above all of it is Connor, a child old enough to sense every tremor in the adults who shape his world. Adam faces the truth like a man forced to stare directly at himself. He once believed his life was complicated because of black and white decisions, because he chose wrong and tried to repair the damage later. This isn't black and white. This is a trap made of gray. Every path demands a sacrifice and none of them stay clean. If he leans toward Chelsea, he can build the story of stability and family, the promise of a home for Connor. But he will shove Sally into a darkness of pain that could make her dangerous. If he leans toward Sally, he will shatter what Chelsea has finally dared to believe, and his vow to be different will become a lie. If he tries to hold both by delaying, he will plant seeds of bitterness and turn Chelsea and Sally into permanent enemies, turning children into witnesses of a war that never ends. Adam understands all of this. Understanding, however, does not mean he can choose. Chelsea, when she learns Sally is pregnant too, feels as if the fragile floor she has been standing on begins to shake again. It isn't only rivalry that strikes her. It's the sudden collapse of the safety she had barely allowed herself to trust. She doesn't know if Sally is telling the truth or wielding desperation. But deep inside, Chelsea senses Sally would not gamble this hard without something real. The future Chelsea imagined steady, focused, centered around Connor feels threatened by a new storm system forming right over her head. Sally, at the same time, feels both saved and drowned. Pregnancy gives her a place that cannot be ignored. It also forces her to face the most frightening part of her own history, the fear of losing again. The fear of repeating tragedy, the fear that she is dragging a child into a battle between adults. There are moments when Sally wonders if she is doing the right thing, or simply doing the thing that keeps her from being abandoned. But every time she imagines Adam building a home where she does not exist, panic rises and smothers her logic. For Sally, this feels like the last chance. And people become most dangerous when they believe they have nothing left to lose. Adam stands between two pregnant women and realizes the cost of every choice is brutal. If he chooses Chelsea, he may finally build what Connor needs. But he risks turning Sally's pain into something explosive. If he chooses Sally, he risks destroying Chelsea's trust and breaking the image of the man he is trying to become. If he chooses neither, if he delays, he will slowly poison everything. His hesitation becomes its own kind of violence. And the longer the tension holds, the more it threatens to snap. The story does not end with a clean decision. It ends with suspension, like a storm hanging in the sky, waiting for the first crack of thunder. Adam still hasn't spoken his choice, but his silence is enough to make both Chelsea and Sally imagine the darkest possibilities. Chelsea holds onto Connor and asks herself whether stability was ever truly possible with Adam, or whether she was only borrowing hope until the bill came due. Sally clings to her new hope and wonders whether it's a miracle, the beginning of another cycle of loss. And Adam, trapped between two futures that grow heavier with every passing day, begins to sense that the hardest decision may not be choosing Chelsea or Sally at all, but choosing which version of himself will exist after the next step, because once he moves, everything will change and the consequences will not belong to him alone. Then, just as the tension feels ready to break, a darker question slips in like wind under a door. Is Adam hesitating because he cannot choose, or because he is afraid of a different truth? A truth that could make the entire fight for his heart suddenly meaningless? On our TV Spoilers channel, I'm always looking for content inspiration for each video by compiling short video clips to analyze and offer my personal opinions. This channel specializes in analyzing, theorizing, and discussing plot points in the Young and the Restless series from the perspective of a longtime fan. Through this, viewers can gain deeper, more objective, and more interesting insights. Subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the latest news about the Young and the Restless series.